And hello, fabulous AP students. This is your favorite teacher, Mr. Jacobson. I am excited to be with you today. Today, it's all about the manifest destiny, the ideas of manifest destiny, and the Mexican American War that will happen as a result of the implication of the implementing of manifest destiny. So, let us begin. All right, so in the 1840s and 50s, you got a lot of people want to expand in America, and they want to expand as far as Mexico, Cuba, Central America. The Americans are feeling pretty good about themselves. So by the 1890s, expansions fixed their sights on acquiring islands, even in the Pacific and the Caribbean. So a lot of ideas going around about how America can expand and sort of flex its power. Now, the phrase manifest destiny expressed the popular belief that the United States had a divine mission to extend its power and civilization across the breadth of North America. So, as you can see in this picture here are pioneers moving west, and of course, they're being protected, if you will, by divinity or an angel or something like that, right? This was driven by the number of forces of, for example, nationalism, population increase, rapid economic development, technological advances, reform ideals. So a lot's contributing to eventually what we get as this manifest destiny idea. So Texas is a pretty big thing on the horizon here. So you got Stephen Austin, and he's going to bring in a lot of people, 300 families into Texas, and slowly there's going to be this migration into Texas. So by 1830, Americans, both white farmers and enslaved black people, they're going to outnumber Mexicans by 3 to 1. So we're going to start seeing some conflict happen. So in 1834, we're going to see General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, and he is going to be made the dictator of Mexico, and he's going to abolish the nation's federal government. So when Santa Anna attempts to enforce Mexico's laws in Texas, a group of American settlers led by Sam Houston, they're not going to like that so much. They're going to revolt, and they're even going to start declaring Texas as independent. So in the new Constitution, Texas is going to make slavery legal. So Santa Anna is going to lead an army and capture the town of Goliad, and he's going to attack the Alamo in San Antonio. He's going to kill everyone of its American defenders. So that's the famous remember the Alamo thing. So Santa Anna is this dictator. He doesn't like that there's a group of Americans who have declared independence, if you will. And so he's trying to show that you can't do that, and he's going to go to war with these people. And the Alamo was a pretty good victory for them, as far as winning at least. Now, Santana was captured eventually by Sam Houston at the Battle of Jacinto River and was forced to sign a treaty recognizing the independence of all Texans, granting a new republic to all territories north of the Rio Grande. Now, this is important to remember because here we have Sam Houston saying, no, 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 the border goes down to the Rio Grande. Whereas in the future, the Mexican government's going to try and dispute that, which is going to lead to more conflict. Anyway, the Mexican legislator is going to reject the treaty, and they're going to say, no, we don't agree to it, and there's going to be a more to happen as a result. So Texas is going to apply for annexation. There's going to be a lot of politics going on in Congress here. Okay, uh, one of the major concerns happening was, all right, look, if we let Texas in, then that's probably going to get divided up into like 5 new states, and that could mean they're all pro-slavery, which is going to tip the balance in the Senate's favor. And they didn't like, and so the northern Democrats really didn't like that, and even other political opponents as well. So President John Tyler was a Southern Whig who was worried about the growing influence of the British in Texas. He worked to annex Texas, but the U.S. Senate rejected this treaty of annexation in 1844. So again, it's going to take a process here. Let's jump over to Maine. Maine is also having some boundary disputes. Remember that because of the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, Americans don't really like British. Plus, you got the impressment going, right? Just anyway, so there's a lot of mistrust there. So conflict is going to break out at the Maine Canadian border. If you look over here, it's right in this area where the lines are all, um, lines squiggly. And anyway, so in the northern part of Maine, and so there's going to be a dispute. It's going to be the Battle of the Maps, and a treaty will be negotiated between the U.S. Secretary of State Daniel Webster and the British Ambassador Lord Alexander Ashburton. This will be known as the Webster-Ashburton Treaty. It's going to take care of the disputed territories. It's going to split between Maine and British Canada. However, it's also, because it's at the same parallel, it's also going to affect the boundary line in what will be the Minnesota territory, which will be benefit for America since the iron-rich Mesabi Range will be on their side of the border. Now in Oregon, you also have some boundary disputes. Understand that you got a lot of people who are trying to get Oregon, okay, who've had connections to the Oregon territory. You got the Russians, you got the Spanish, you got the British. Obviously, you have the Americans, especially with the Lewis and Clark expedition, right? So there's a lot of people that feel like they have a little bit of claim here. Eventually, they're going to start dropping out. For example, Spain's going to drop out when they have the Adam Onis Treaty of 1819, and Spain's going to pretty much just sort of cede all that territory and be done with it. Um, the the U.S. They're going to say this is ours, and they're going to have two reasons. Okay, one, you got exploration of the Columbian River by Captain Robert Gray in 1792. Oh, our guy did this, so and then you got the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1805, and then you also have just a lot of fur trading that's been going on, and you got the Fort Astoria, Oregon. It was established by John Jacob, 1811. And so there are Americans living there, and there's a pretty good knowledge of that land, according to Americans. And so, anyway, so a lot of them were feeling okay. We should have that. Now, Protestant missionaries and farmers settled in the Willamette Valley in the 1840s. This is pretty significant because this becomes the whole Oregon Trail fiasco, right? Where a lot of people are trying to find better lands and they're trying to cross the American desert or the Great Plains, if you will. And so they get that Oregon fever. And so a lot of people are gonna be trying to get over there. They even made a video game called Oregon Trail. I don't know if you played it, but anyway, it's fun. So you have the election of 1844 happening. There's an issue. The Democratic Party, the Northern Democrats, want Martin Van Buren, who used to be president and lost. And anyway, he could run one more time, apparently. The Southern Democrats, they want John C. Calhoun of South Carolina. And so this becomes the Van Buren Calhoun dispute. They're like in a deadlock at the Democratic convention. So instead, they're like, okay, forget the two of them. Let's choose somebody in the middle. And so they chose James K. Polk, who's a protege of Andrew Jackson, and he was highly committed to Manifest Destiny. So Polk favored the annexation of Texas, the acquisition of California. He's just like an all guns ablazing, everything's America. He even had this idea that America's land for Oregon should go all the way up to the latitude 5440, which is all the way up to like Alaska. So he's saying we're gonna take it all. The Oregon Territory is gonna go all the way up through modern day Canada, which we all know, and then it's gonna go all the way up to Alaska. And he talked a really big game, a lot of high rhetoric, inspired a lot of people. He's going to narrowly beat Henry Clay, who was the Whig candidate, and he's going to interpret that win as a mandate to add Texas to the Union. So because Polk wins, he's like, all right, Americans want Texas in. So we're going to annex Texas. So President Tyler took the election of Polk as a single push for the annexation through Congress instead of seeking Senate approval of a treaty that would require 2/3 vote, Tyler persuaded both houses of Congress to pass a joint resolution for annexation. That would be a lot easier to pass since this is something brought about by both houses. So they just needed a majority, but not like that, 2/3 majority. So anyway, so Tyler's gonna unfortunately leave Polk with all the implications of of annexing Texas, including Mexico's reaction. On the Oregon front, however, we're gonna see that the election, Polk's gonna back down to the whole 54-40 thing, right? And he's going to say, all right, well, the British probably aren't going to be too happy if we do that, because then we're taking all their land in Canada. And so anyway, the agreement comes down to the 49th parallel, and that's where they decided with the Louisiana Purchase. So yeah, we're gonna see the eventual annexation of Oregon, but it's not gonna be the 54-40 thing that was highly spewed during that election. So the final agreement was delayed until the U.S. agreed to grant Vancouver Island and the right to navigate the Columbia River to Britain. So not only is America not going to 44 the I'm sorry 54-40 parallel, but they're going to allow Britain to have Vancouver Island, and they're going to allow them control the Columbia River. So it's really not looking like America's winning like Americans thought they would in this one. By the time war had broken out between the U.S. and Mexico, so whole people weren't really concerned about the Oregon thing, because Mexico and the Mexican American War was beginning, so people were focused on that. So anyway, we have settlements happening in the Western Territories. You got obviously you got Oregon happening, right? Um, Keep in mind that between the region of the Mississippi Valley and the Pacific Coast, this was known as the Great American Desert. And it's important that should be a term that should be a buzzword. Great American Desert. You're gonna notice like the Great Plains, but people really didn't see a whole lot of value in between the Mississippi and the West Coast. Um, it, they're gonna cross all of that to get to the West Coast to live there, and eventually people are gonna start living in the Great Plains area. But that's not at first. It's just they pass over all of it to get to the good part, which was California, Oregon, etc. Right? So eventually, though, there's going to be other trails happening. You got the Oregon Trail happening. You got the Mormon Trail, and then many others, as you see here as well. So a lot of these trails are going to start like around Missouri or maybe Iowa, Council Bluffs, Iowa, Independence, Missouri, somewhere around there. And they're going to go through their destinations. One of the worst places or the hardest part of the journey, at least, is you got to get over the Rocky Mountains, right? So to do that, you want to make sure that the first heavy snowfall happened after you were through the mountain pass of the Sierras and the Cascades. Because if not, then you are in deep trouble. You end up like the Donner Party, where they froze to death and are notorious for having eaten each other, try to survive. So just a very horrible, uh, pathetic situation to have to be in. And then a lot of things to keep in mind is that, yeah, there are Native American Indians that attack people on the way at times, and that was a concern. But disease was a bigger concern, and also depression was a concern. I mean, just walking day after day, like with very little like end in sight for some people. I mean, it's just depressing, hard. These are harsh conditions, man. Anyone who did this, we should have some amazing, if not respect, at least give them props for what they did, because it's astounding how many people crossed over these plains and lived to tell the tale. All right. So we have frontier living here. So we got a lot of mining happening. If you ever heard the gold rush originated in California, And then you're going to see other places like Colorado, Nevada, the Dakotas. You'll see other places where people can mine gold or silver or anything like that. Population in California is going to soar from 14,000 in 1848 to 380,000 in 1860. So the gold rush, the gold rush is facilitates the population explosion of California during the 1850s and 60s, right? These booms are going to attract miners from all across the world. In fact, 1/3 of the miners in the West were Chinese at this point. So even people in China were like, hey, there's gold to be found. You also have urban frontier happening, and we're going to see some pretty amazing things happen. You got railroads happening. You have professional businesses and people, investors coming out. They're going to invest a lot of money in places like San Francisco, Denver, where mining was very profitable. Salt Lake City, this is where the Mormons settled eventually. That's going to grow because they're going to offer all these fresh supplies to travelers on the overland trails for the balance of the westward journey. So people make it to Salt Lake City, hey, stock up here. You're almost to you're over halfway. You're doing great. Just get some supplies here, and we'll get you the rest of the way there. And so that was good for the people of Salt Lake City. So in foreign commerce, we got a lot of things happening here. Um, there's a lot of manufacturing going on. Yeah, growth in exports, imports, and exports. Other factors play a role of expansion in the U.S. For one, you got shipping firms who encourage trade across the Atlantic by establishing a regular scheduled departures instead of 18th century policy of waiting to sail until a ship was full. So ships are going more on a schedule rather than okay, we're full, let's make sail now. The demand for whale oil to light the homes of middle class Americans caused a whaling boom between this time, especially with New England merchants. You're going to have improvements in ship designs. So, for example, you're going to have the American Clipper ship, and that's going to be much faster than the traditional ships. It's going to cut a 6-month trip from New York or going around the Horn of Africa to San Francisco, which is normally 6 months. They could do in 89 days. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And then you're going to have new technologies like the steamships that are going to start coming about. And those are going to just completely outpace the Clipper ship in every way possible, not to mention it'll have greater storage capacity. And then you're going to have the U.S. Make contact with Japan through Matthew Perry or Commodore Matthew Perry, and Matthew Perry is going to basically sets foot on Japan and say, "Do you see those beautiful steam engines over there in the horizon that you could only dream owning one day? Well, guess what? You're going to trade with us, or we are going to make you trade with us." So they're going to pressure Japan's government to sign the Kana, Kanagawa Treaty. And that's going to be where Japan is going to trade with the U.S., and the U.S. will trade with them. And this treaty will lead to more trade agreements coming forward. This is going to lead to the Japanese Meiji Restoration, where the Japan is going to start forsaking the shogunate and feudalism and emerge more into a constitution of sorts. Okay, so we have conflict with Mexico happening. Texas and that Mexico dispute, it's not over, as I told you before. So Mexico's angry at the annexation, and then President Polk's desire to expand the nation to the Pacific Ocean brought both sides to the edge of war. Polk sent John Slidell, sure, as his special envoy to Mexico City. Now, Polk wanted him to, one, persuade Mexico to sell California and New York territories to the United States, and two, settle the dispute of the Mexican-Texas border. He failed on both counts. Mexico refused to sell California, and they insisted that the Texas border was on the Nueces River. And then Polk is saying, no, 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 it's on the Rio Grande River. So if you look here, I mean, unfortunately, it's not super big, but this is the Rio Grande River down here. This is the Nueces River right here. So do you see where the orange is versus the light yellow? The light yellow is the boundary that America said it should be, and the orange is the boundary that Mexico said it should be. So Polk is not going to take this sitting down. He's going to make a move, and Zachary Taylor will be his move. He's going to move towards the Rio Grande and cross the territory claimed by Mexico. So on April 24th, 1846, the Mexican army is going to cross the Rio Grande, and they're going to capture an American army patrol, killing 11. Now, Polk's going to use this incident and say, haha, now we can really go to war here. And so they're going to prepare for war. They're going to, the Northern Whigs are going to oppose going to war, uh, thinking that this is just a ruse to sort of uh, gobble up more land, which it very well could have been. Polk claimed that the American blood had been spilled on American soil, so there has to be some retaliation, if you will. The Whigs are going to protest in vain because most of America, after they found out, that American blood was spilled on American soil, then most Americans are on with this. So it's an emotional thing, right? Most of the war was fought in Mexican territory by small armies of Americans of around 1,500. General Stephen Kearny succeeded in taking the New Mexico territory in the south and Southern California. John C. Fremont quickly overthrew American or Mexican rule in California region in June of 46. He's going to proclaim uh, California as independent republic. It's going to have this amazing flag with the grizzly bear on it, as you can see, and this will be known as the Bear Flag Republic. Zachary Taylor's forces, they're not going to stop there. They're going to keep going, and they're going to go all the way down to northern Mexico, winning a major victory at Buena Vista. Polk selected General Winfield Scott to invade central Mexico. The army of 14,000 under Scott's command is going to succeed. They're going to conquer Veracruz, and then they're going to capture Mexico City in September of 1847. Did you guys know that? America captured Mexico City. So, this is really going to make as the Americans were conquering through Mexico, Mexican government was like, whatever, we're just going to keep fighting, we're just going to keep fighting. But after they conquered Mexico City, the government's like, okay, what do you want? So at this point, they come up with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And what that means is it's going to be finally agreed that the Rio Grande River is the southern border of Texas. And then we're going to have the United States take possession of the former Mexican province of California, New Mexico. That's going to be known as the Mexican Cession. Okay, so all this land here, as you can see, this is known as the Mexican Cession of 1848. For these territories, the United States will pay $15 million to the Mexican government and assume responsibility for any claims of American citizens against Mexico. In the Senate, the Whigs are going to oppose the treaty because they saw the war as an immoral effort to expand slavery. Some Southern Democrats disagree with the treaty because they wanted the U.S. to take it all. Hey, why didn't you take Mexico, and why didn't you continue taking things? And anyway, so the Southern Democrats, they like the idea that they could expand southward because that didn't violate the Missouri Compromise. The Missouri Compromise only violated the north part, right? But anything south, they felt like they could conquer and they could continue expanding slavery and their power that way. So you got the Wilmot Proviso. So here's a guy who's in Pennsylvania. He doesn't like slavery and he doesn't like that slave states are trying to get more power. and to acquire Mexico. So he's going to write a bill, and that bill is going to prohibit any slavery in any of the territory acquired from Mexico. Well, that's not going to go so well. But this really is going to reveal the hand, at least for the Southern Democrats who are for slavery, that the Northern Democrats and many of the people just people don't want slavery, and instead of saying, okay, maybe we need to start rethinking things, they're just going to look at this as a way to sort of usurp them, and so it's going to lead to further division. The Wilmot Proviso, um, it's going to pass the House both times because the House was dominated by the Northern Democrats and politicians, right? However, the Senate was dominated by Southern, so every time the House passed it, the Senate would just say, and they would kill it right there. And so you can see the deadlock happening. You can see the sectionalism beginning and how the Mexican American Revolution sort of fueled that. So what does this all mean? The acquisition of western lands did renew the sectional debate over the extension of slavery. Many Northerners viewed the war with Mexico as part of Southern plot to extend the slave power. Southerners realized they cannot count on Northerners to accept the expansion of slavery. The Wilmot Proviso was the first round in an escalating political conflict that led ultimately, though not inevitably, to civil war. And that's it. Go ahead and write your summary, and we'll talk about this when we return.